Hey golfers, Will here, Golf Psychologist. Today I'm going to be going through part 2 of my mental game series. Stay tuned, I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Alright, so we're dealing with the mental game. And one of the things that I tell my students, especially when I'm working with junior golfers that have aspirations to want to play in high school, college, and beyond, is that the golf game is 100% mental. I say that because sometimes people say it's 80% physical or 20% mental. Maybe they'll reverse it and say it's 10% physical and 80% or 90% mental. It's 100% mental. And what I mean by that is everything starts up here. Unlike other sports where you're just running off of adrenaline because you're in, say, basketball or football, you're just reacting to what's going on, and you're training your body in those sports to just kind of be able to react the right way, but you don't have time to think. In golf you have time. You hit a shot and then you got to walk or get in your cart to the next shot, and you have time to think. You're walking up to the green and you know you have that putt and it's a right to left breaker from 30 feet and you know you're prone to three putting, so you're thinking about that the entire walk up to the putt. So these are scenarios that we run into all the time as golfers. Now, I have the unique perspective of not only being a golf instructor but also working in the field of sports psychology toward my PhD, and I'm learning a lot about what's going on in our mind and how it relates to our body. So this part 2 has to do with a term that is called buoyancy. B-U-O-Y-A-N-C-Y. It's kind of a strange word, but if you've ever seen a buoy out in the ocean bobbing around, it's attached to something that's anchored all the way down at the bottom of the ocean. And that is there to maybe be a signal for a boat coming in. Maybe it has a light on it, but it may look like it's moving around. It's securely tied to the ground. And so that's kind of where this term comes from. Has to do with responding to pressure situations. Mentally tough people are able to respond to pressure. So what you have to do as a golfer is train yourself to respond to pressure situations. I see people practicing in ideal conditions, flat lies on a driving range, perfect grass, they're rolling the ball up exactly where they want it. They're hitting off of a mat, which you can't have a bad lie on a mat. They're not practicing the scenarios they're going to run into on the course. A lot of people hit a lot of balls, but they don't practice the short game. They hit a few putts before they're going to go play, but they're not out there really practicing their putting in a way that's preparing them for the pressure they're going to feel when they're out there on the course. So why do we feel pressure? We feel pressure because our mind starts to go to places of what if scenarios. We're saying, what if I miss this putt? What if I hit this ball out of bounds? What if I hit this ball in the water? What if I chunk this bunker shot? We're dealing with the scenario of what will happen if we do something bad. Will my friends make fun of me? Will I not make the team? Will I not be good enough to impress my relative that I'm playing with? All of these scenarios come up in our mind because we are human beings and we respond to what if scenarios. So the question being, how do you prepare yourself to respond to pressure? It has to do with the way you practice. You have to practice to respond to pressure. So if I'm out here on the driving range, instead of hitting my Titleist 8-iron, that's, it's fit for me, it's a really good quality club, and I know I'm going to have good results with it. Instead of that, I'll pull out this old Mizuno blade from like the early 2000s or even before that. Maybe this is like even made in like the late 90s. Grip's worn down. It's hardly any forgiveness on this wedge. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to practice with this to help me prepare for pressure situations. And I'm also going to do things like, instead of hitting a ball from a perfect lie, I'm going to purposely put the ball in a bad lie. I'm not going to cozy it up on top of the grass where it's a perfect scenario. I'm going to make it a little bit harder, maybe put it in a divot or step on it. This puts pressure on me in my practice because I want to try to do something that's hard. So you have to try these types of things in your golf game to prepare yourself for the pressure you're going to feel. It'd be something like, maybe you're starting to get hungry and you're practicing your putting game, and you put some sort of scenario out there where I'm not going to go eat lunch until I make 12 putts in a row. That's an example of putting pressure on yourself to perform at a certain level. These are things that you can do. Maybe you're out on the range hitting your driver, pick out 2 flags that represent a target, like a fairway, and say you want to try to hit 10 shots in between that fairway. And if you miss one, you got to start over again. So you're putting some pressure on yourself to perform, so that when you're out on the course, you're focusing on hitting a drive down the fairway. You've already kind of prepared yourself for that with the way you practiced. What I see a lot of times is people just mindlessly banging balls, and they're going back and getting more and more buckets, and they're just kind of doing the exact same things over and over again. You have to put pressure on yourself in order to perform when you're out there on the course, because everything comes down to being able to perform when it matters. So here's another thing that you can do. What I would suggest is that you get like a friend or somebody that you're familiar playing with, and tell them to grade you on a scale of 1 to 10 throughout a round that you're playing on situations where you had to do something at a critical point. Maybe you typically hit that drive out of bounds, and this hole that's a nemesis for you is always a challenge, and they're looking at how you perform in that situation. Maybe it's out of the bunker, or if you can make that critical 5-foot putt to save par, to get a birdie, or whatever the case may be. After you're done playing, ask your partner, hey, grade me on how I did in pressure situations, and grade yourself as well on that same scale, and then see how those numbers compare. And then even go deeper than that to say, what situations did I tend to fold under? Was it a putting situation? Was it driving? Was it an iron shot? Maybe it was a pitching, those pitching shots around the green, 20, 30 yards, the bump and run shot, whatever the case may be. You start to hone in on where you caved under the pressure, and then start to evaluate yourself from there. Here's why that's important. Have you ever found yourself hitting a shot on maybe a par 3 that's over water, and it goes in the water, and then you pull out another ball, and this one doesn't count because you know you got a drop area you can go up and drop from, and you hit the second ball perfect? Well, that's an example of how the pressure was gone and you performed well. So these are the types of things you have to rate yourself on, and then figure out a course of action of how you're going to improve in those pressure situations. I think if you do that, it takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of strategy, but if you do that, you'll see that you can improve in this area of mental toughness point number 2, and hope it goes well for you. And if you want to schedule a mental performance session with me, you can go to my website at findyourpeakperformance.com, and I'll be glad to set up a time to do that with you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck.